Thank you guys so much.
From the book, Strange Stories and Amazing Facts. This is the story of Spring-Heeled Jack, Superman with eyes of the devil. Can everyone hear that? Out of the mists of the night he came, a leaping, bounding Superman who held a nation in a grip of terror for more than 60 years. At first, he was just a rumor. No one took much notice when people crossing Barnes Common in southwest London first reported seeing an alarming figure that flew through the air in great leaps across their path. But the reports persisted until they were terrifyingly confirmed a year later in February of 1838. Jane Alsop was young and pretty. She lived with her two sisters and their father in a little London back street in Bow called Fairhind Lane. She had heard of the boogeyman called Spring-Heeled Jack, but she was too sensible to heed such tales. One night there was a violent knocking at the door. Jane went to answer it. The man standing in the shadows near the front gate swung around. "I'm a police officer," he said. "For God's sake, bring me a light, for we have caught Spring-Heeled Jack in the lane." The stories were true after all, thought Jane excitedly, as she ran to fetch a candle. "I'll see him being arrested." She rushed back outside with the candle. But as she gave it to the man at the gate, he grabbed her by the neck and he pinned her head under his arm. He ripped at her dress and her body. She screamed and she tore herself away. He chased her, caught her by the hair, and he clawed at her face and neck. One of her sisters, hearing the screams, ran into the street and raised the alarm. But before anyone could stop him, Jack soared away into the darkness. Jane later described her inhuman attacker to Lambeth magistrates. He was wearing a kind of helmet, she told them, and a tight-fitting white costume like an oilskin. His face was hideous. His eyes were like balls of fire. His hands had great claws, and he vomited fluid like flames. It was a description that was to be repeated over and over again in the following years. Always the leaks, always the flames, always the eyes of hell. Eyes of hell! Lucy Scales was 18 years old, the sister of a respected Limehouse butcher. She had just left her brother's house one evening on her way home with her sister. As they walked along lonely Green Dragon Alley, a tall cloaked figure jumped out of the shadows. He spat blue veins at Lucy's face and he blinded her. During the 1850s and 1860s, Spring-Heeled Jack was sighted all over England, particularly in the Midlands. In the 1870s, Army authorities set traps after scared sentries reported being terrified by a man who darted out of the darkness to slap their faces with an icy hand or sprang onto the roof of their sentry boxes. Angry townsfolk in Lincoln shot at him when he appeared in the streets one night in 1877, but always he laughed and melted away into the darkness. No one, not even today, really has an idea who or what Spring-Heeled Jack was. For a while, suspicion rested on the eccentric young Marquis of Waterford. But though the Mad Marquis, as he was known, was one of the wild ones of Victorian society, he was never vicious. Jack's Eyes of Hell were last seen in 1904 at Everton in Liverpool, 67 years after the first sighting in Barnes. There he started a panic one night by bounding up and down the streets, leaping from cobbles to rooftops and back. And when some of the braver ones tried to corner him, he simply vanished into the darkness from where he came. But this time, was it for good? And that, ladies and gentlemen, was the story of Spring-Heeled Jack on this Friday the 13th.